The Zarketh Dominion did not fear war. It defined them. For millennia, their fleets had carved order into chaos, turning wild worlds into structured systems. They brought logic, structure, dominance. Resistance wasn't crushed, it was erased. And now they had turned their gaze toward a small, chaotic planet in the Sol system, Earth. General Terexon stood aboard the Dominion command vessel Teraxis, hands behind his back, looking down at the swirling blue orb on the main screen. It was beautiful in its simplicity, pristine, unclaimed, ripe for assimilation. "Begin the deployment," he ordered. Beneath his voice, 1,000 ships shifted in synchronized patterns. 1 million soldiers locked into drop pods, sleek and silver, descending like a meteor storm. The Dominion believed in numbers, precision, and momentum. Earth was listed as a primitive outlier. Conquest was a formality. Inside one of those drop pods sat Private Kale, his first mission. He clutched the rifle strapped across his chest, heart pounding beneath his armor. He activated his personal log. Private. "Kale, first deployment," he whispered, excitement leaking through his calm. "Zarketh Command says this is a standard pacification sweep. No threats, no surprises, just honor, glory, and maybe a promotion." The other soldiers joked around him. Earth, they said, wouldn't last a cycle. The humans, undisciplined, too emotional, too disorganized to mount any serious resistance. Kyle nodded along, but in his gut, he felt something else. Curiosity. He'd read the briefings, scanned the reports. Earth's history wasn't like other worlds. Their wars were messy, brutal. Their science was chaotic, brilliant. Their culture didn't follow patterns, and though the official debriefs called them weak, Kyle remembered the phrase one analyst had used before being corrected: adaptable. Dangerously adaptable. Still, the command dismissed it. General Terexon himself had scoffed. They believe survival is strength, but survival is reaction, not strategy. We will bring them structure. The armada descended. Kyle's pod broke. Through the atmosphere, rattling violently. Outside, he caught flashes of sprawling cities, grid-perfect roads, power towers still humming with energy. But where were the humans? As the pod touched down, alerts pinged in his HUD. Something was wrong. "No resistance detected," one voice said over comms. Another responded, confused. "No life signs, not even civilian. This can't be right." "Stick to protocol," came the officer's reply. Kyle stepped out of the pod and looked around. The city was clean, completely intact. Storefronts stood with lights still flickering behind shattered glass. Signs blew gently in the wind. The streets weren't scarred by battle. They were abandoned, but not looted, not burned, just left, spread out, barked. His sergeant, Kale's unit, moved through the city like ghosts, weapons raised. Static hissed through their radios. One soldier turned a corner and froze. Kyle followed and stopped there, sprayed across a pristine wall in white paint. "This is not your war." Kyle felt something tighten in his chest. That's when the static changed. At first it was just noise. Then a voice, soft, human, laughing, not scared, amused. The laugh echoed through his helmet's comms. Kyle turned in place, looking for the source. The laughter faded into a whisper. "Welcome to Earth." And then silence. Not fear, not resistance. Something else, something worse. They hadn't landed in chaos. They'd landed in a trap. The drop was perfect. Textbook. Kale's boots hit the ground with a heavy thud, his squad fanning out in practiced formation. The city that stretched around them was too clean. Roads swept, traffic lights blinking, buildings intact like they hadn't seen a single shot fired. The air was still. No alarms, no sirens, not even the hum of life. Just stillness. It was the kind of silence that didn't sit right. It pressed down on them, crept into their armor. Kyle scanned the skyline. It looked like a place that had been evacuated before a storm. But where was the storm? Where were the people? Zarketh strike teams reported in quickly. One by one, communications hubs were taken without resistance. Energy stations fell into Zarketh hands. Earth's satellite towers broadcast nothing but static. Not a single human soldier had been seen. Back on the command ship, high-ranking officers began celebrating. Victory in record time. Kyle tried to believe it, but something gnawed at him. Every outpost they reached had working systems, running power, warm food, but no signs of a fight, no bullet holes, no blood. It was like someone had laid out the pieces and stepped away, like they were meant to walk in. Orders came in, investigate underground anomalies. Kale's squad descended into a subway station, dark and humming with flickering lights. The platform stretched into endless shadow. The moment they stepped inside, their comms began to sputter. One of the scouts, Erak, moved ahead. His signal blinked out, no warning, no sound, gone. Kyle rushed forward, but the tunnels had twisted. His HUD map spun uselessly. Walls looked different. They regrouped minutes later, -1. No trace. Not a footstep, not a scream, just missing. The squad was rattled. No one spoke. Next came a sweep through the outskirts, dense forest and hills, natural terrain, or so they thought. Motion detectors lit up everywhere. But when Kale's team investigated, they found drones. Not Dominion tech, but their own. Machines, salvaged and reprogrammed. Human hands had rebuilt them into nightmares. Branches snapped. A sonic pulse went off. Soldiers dropped, clutching their heads. Neurodisruptors followed. Kyle could barely hear over the ringing in his skull. Then came the heat signatures, wolves, bears, deer, but they were all projections, holograms. A soldier fired at one, and the tree next to him exploded from a hidden mine. The humans weren't reacting, they were hunting. At night, they're real. War began. The comms were no longer silent. They sang, soft music, laughter, whispered lullabies in different languages, riddles spoken in calm human voices. Lights in distant buildings blinked in impossible patterns. Some of the soldiers stopped, sleeping. Others began seeing things, home cities, dead family members, old regrets. One screamed about drowning before choking on his own breath. Kyle sat with his back to a wall, eyes wide, listening to a child's voice say over and over, "Are you scared yet?" They weren't being jammed, they were being broken. Then came the rescue signal, a flare on comms, friendly beacon, Zarketh code. Kale's squad moved fast, desperate to regroup with any remaining force. They reached the coordinates. Nothing, no lights, no friendlies, just a silence deeper than before. Then the first shot dropped their lead scout, no warning. A cloaked AI drone hovered above the roof, precision-built and soundless. 2 more soldiers fell before anyone could respond. Kyle hit the ground, returning fire blindly. Smoke filled the air. Amid the chaos, he saw her, a human soldier, no visible armor, face calm. She moved between cover without a wasted step, took down a target, then vanished. It wasn't rage, it was execution. They weren't in a fight, they were in a plan. Kyle and the remaining survivors ran, back through broken streets, through alleyways, where even the shadows felt like threats. Their boots hit pavement, but the ground didn't feel steady. The gravity was subtly off, like the world was pulsing. Time felt fractured, watches unsynced, seconds slipping away without notice. Equipment failed. Ammo loads vanished from inventory. Sensors gave false positives. The world itself was being rewritten. Earth wasn't defending. It was transforming. Kale collapsed in a ruined storefront, gasping for breath. He looked around at the handful who remained. No longer warriors, just beings out of their depth. The city pulsed again. Every step forward was another mistake. Every plan, a trap. Kyle finally understood. This wasn't a war, it was a lesson. The last update came 4 hours ago. Then, silence. Kale cycled through every encrypted frequency, every fallback channel, every Dominion link. Nothing. Static. He checked again. Still nothing. His squad huddled beneath the blackened shell of a half-collapsed overpass. The air was heavy, not just with tension but with spores, microscopic particles native to Earth, now seeping through their filters. A thick fog clung to the ground. The filters whined. A few soldiers coughed, their voices strained. Food rations spoiled unnaturally fast, water canisters turning cloudy. Equipment that once glowed with Dominion precision flickered or died without reason. Their HUDs rebooted randomly, weapons misfired. Earth wasn't just resisting, it was fighting back with the world itself. The planet had turned into an enemy. Kyle ventured out in search of others. He found them 2 days later, survivors from other units. But what he found wasn't unity. It was panic wrapped in armor. Some were wounded. Some were hallucinating. All were fractured. Command had dissolved, and in its absence, fear took control. Small factions argued. One group wanted to signal for surrender. Another talked of pushing forward. A third hoarded stolen rations. Kyle tried to reason with them, to rebuild the chain of command, but it was gone. The structure that had held them together, the Dominion's order, had unraveled. Infighting began. A soldier shoved another over a ration pack. The one with the knife didn't hesitate. Kyle pulled them apart too late. Trust had bled out in the fog. While scavenging a burned-out Earth bunker, Kyle stumbled upon a solar-charged terminal, still glowing in the dark. It played video, old footage. No encryption, just stories. Human children in battered classrooms. Soldiers crying after pulling survivors from rubble. Scientists laughing as they rerouted broken tech into working shields. Earth's history wasn't clean or controlled. It was survival layered in desperation and triumph. They had built strength from collapse, not order. Chaos was their blueprint. Kyle stood in the flickering light and watched, something in him shifting. They hadn't won by being prepared for war. They had won by being prepared for anything. Later that cycle, Kyle's squad spotted a lone human scout moving across a ridge. They set an ambush. Positions were taken, weapons charged. The moment came, the trap sprang, but the human didn't. Raise a weapon. He raised his hands. He looked directly at Kyle and said calmly, "We're not what you think." Then he disappeared into smoke. No attack, no retaliation, just a message. Kyle stood frozen. That moment shattered something deeper than fear. If they weren't the enemy the Dominion promised, what had they been fighting? Desperation grew. One of Kyle's oldest squad mates, Taran, tried something reckless. He hacked into an open channel and attempted to trade Dominion intelligence for safety with a human patrol. Kyle found out too late. The patrol played along. The meet was arranged, and Taran was executed. Kyle found what was left. The data pad with the open message. He closed it quietly, told no one. That night, Kyle didn't sleep. He sat alone, watching the stars blink through shifting clouds. He couldn't tell who the enemy was anymore. All he knew was that this war had stopped being about victory. Now it was about keeping whatever was left of themselves intact. The next day, Kyle stood over Taran's body. No one said anything. The group looked to him. There were no orders, no codes left to follow. He raised his weapon and ended the betrayal, not for punishment, for protection. His hands trembled. His voice didn't come. The others nodded slowly, grim. There was no justice, only necessity. Something inside Kyle snapped into place. He didn't fight for the Dominion anymore. He fought for something else, something not yet named. Days passed. The squad moved like shadows now, silent, hollow-eyed, dirty and scarred. Their armor was chipped. Their pride long buried. Kyle looked at them and didn't see soldiers. He saw survivors. Barely. At night, Kyle opened a small recording chip and began speaking, not to command, but to the unknown. "My name is Kyle. I was Zarketh. We came here thinking this would be easy, that we would conquer a primitive world, that we would teach them order." He paused. "They taught us something else." He saved the file. Hid it in a place no sensor could detect. Maybe one day someone would find it. Someone who needed to know that Earth hadn't just survived, it had watched them crumble and waited. The crater stretched wide, smooth as polished glass. It shimmered faintly under the grey sky, humming with an invisible charge that made Kale's skin crawl beneath his armor. What had once been marked as a key Dominion fortress zone was now nothing but scorched earth and silence. He and the last few survivors stepped cautiously onto the edge, their boots crunching ash. No bodies, no debris, just emptiness. Kyle approached the center, his weapon lowered, eyes scanning. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was coiled, expectant. A soft hum pulsed beneath his feet. Then, without warning, shadows broke from the surrounding ridges. Sleek human drones, quiet as ghosts. They didn't fire. They didn't move. They just watched. Kyle froze, the others behind him stiffening. A voice crackled over the comms. Clear, calm, female, we've been waiting for you. The drones parted, and a signal pinged. Secure, untraceable. Dominion encryption, hijacked. The voice again, this time in his headset. Kyle, he blinked. They knew his name. This is Commander Arya Kane. You are the last in your region. Every other unit has been accounted for, not killed, defeated, with precision. Kyle's breath caught in his throat. He looked around. No one denied it. No one had anything left to deny. You have a choice, she continued. Stand down, return, carry the truth, or stay and fade like the others. There will be no torture, no spectacle, just honesty. Her tone wasn't mocking, it wasn't even cold, it was steady, like she wasn't trying to win, just trying to end it. Kyle stood alone that night, away from the others, stars barely breaking through Earth's haze. He held a sidearm in his hands. Dominion protocol made clear what failure meant. He thought of the soldiers who had died, Terran, Iraq, all the names, all the voices, all gone because they believed in a victory that never existed. His fingers hovered near the trigger. Then he remembered her words. Your survival could change everything. He closed his eyes, breathed, and lowered the weapon. They came for him at dawn. No cuffs, no threats. Just a single human in grey armor and a wordless gesture to follow. He was blindfolded, led through twisting corridors, and then down, deep underground. When the blindfold came off, he stood in the center of something he couldn't understand. An underground city, alive. Lights powered by alien cores glowed with warm, soft energy. Children ran through passageways laughing, engineers huddled with machines, teaching them, improving them. He saw AIs holding conversations with humans, like equals, plants growing under synthetic starlight, music somewhere in the walls, and then she stood in front of him. Arya Kane, calm, confident, tired. We didn't just survive, she said. We learned. We evolved. Kyle couldn't speak. The Dominion had trained him to expect resistance, not resilience, to conquer, not to witness. But here, Earth hadn't just fought back. It had grown from the fire. In a quiet room overlooking the core of the city they sat, just the two of them. Kane looked at him. Why did your people come? Kyle hesitated. Because we were told to. Why did you keep fighting? He swallowed. Because we were told to win. She nodded. Sad. We survived long enough to understand you. Then we adapted faster than you could imagine. That's all it took. Hale looked at her. Then you didn't just win. No, she said. We became something you couldn't conquer. The next day they gave him a stealth ship. No guards, no armor, no weapons. Just one small crystal data drive. And the memories. In his head, he sat alone in the passenger cabin as Earth faded in the distance behind him. He didn't know what he would say when he returned, or if anyone would listen. Kane's voice echoed in his memory. You came to break us. Instead, you made us evolve. He realized the truth in her words, not just in what had happened, but in what it meant. The war had never broken humanity. It had revealed them. Kale sat alone inside the transport craft, the weight of silence pressing. In harder than gravity, he had returned to Dominion space without fanfare. No victory, no debriefing lines of commanding officers, no flag-bearing processions, just a locked cabin, shadowed guards, and cold glances. When the ship docked, they pulled him from the seat like cargo, dragging him into cold interrogation. Chambers deep beneath the capital's surface. He barely resisted. What was there to fight for? The questions came fast, sharp, over and over. How did you survive? Why didn't you complete the mission? What did the humans do to you? Kyle said little, just enough to confirm the truth. The invasion had failed, not due to resistance, not due to firepower, but because they had never truly understood what they were walking into. He didn't give them the full story. They wouldn't have believed it anyway, and yet the truth has a way of slipping through cracks. Whispers started inside military ranks. A few low-ranked analysts passed rumors. Across encrypted messages, someone leaked Kyle's comlogs. A hacked transmission from Earth surfaced, a human child's voice reciting a poem in the ruins. Then drone footage, Zarketh soldiers retreating into smoke. Then a name, Kyle, the only survivor. Across planets under Dominion rule, the story, and caught fire, not as classified evidence, but as legend, that Earth, a single world, had stood against 1 million and remained standing. The word human began to change. No longer a primitive classification. Now it was a question, a challenge, a contradiction. Analysts in the Dominion began referring to them not as savages, but as a cultural paradox. Their chaos made them stronger, their emotions an edge, their unpredictability a weapon. Other alien species, long subjugated, silenced, began to wonder if Earth was alone in this strength, or if that spirit might exist in them too. Meanwhile, Kale lived far from the noise, exiled. A dusty moon near the edge of the Zarketh star belt. No patrols, no politics, just sky and dust. There he began to write, not reports, not defense logs, but a story. His story, not for military records, but for whoever might come after. He didn't blame the humans. How could he? They had fought not to conquer, but to remain whole. They hadn't broken him with violence. They'd shaken him with mercy, with resilience, with the kind of unity he'd never seen even among his own kind. And most dangerous of all, they chose everything they did. Chose to fight, chose to forgive, chose to adapt. He envied that. Back in the Dominion core, something deeper was cracking. The high strategium fractured. Some called for vengeance. A second wave? They demanded retribution, a show of power. Others hesitated. Earth had become more than a military loss. It was a reflection they didn't like. What if their systems were outdated? What if they had bred obedience but forgotten? How to grow? Quiet factions began to form, questioning what they were told, what they believed. Kyle's name was never spoken publicly, but in the shadows, in hidden networks and whispered meetings, he became something else. Not a deserter, not a traitor, a witness. The sky above the outpost was the color of ash, dull gray, unchanging. The stars here didn't twinkle. They just sat, cold and distant, unmoving like the man who watched them. Kyle adjusted the tool in his hand, tightening a valve on a water recycler. Unit. The machine hissed, then stabilized. He nodded to himself. Another quiet success. Another day alone, away from war, from orders, from failure. His hands bore the grooves of years, scars of battles and mistakes. His voice, once firm with youth, had grown slow, deliberate. He didn't speak often, and when he did, people listened. Not because he commanded them, but because he carried the weight of something no one else could name. Here, on this barren rim world, he was just a mechanic, not a survivor, not a ghost, not the last. They came in the third cycle of the year, young, Recruits, sent by some distant academy for survival drills. The outpost wasn't on any major route, but legends had their own gravity. Kyle didn't acknowledge them at first. He watched from a distance, working on an old relay tower while they tested signal flares. It was always like this, eyes on him, whispers just loud enough to hear, and then, finally, one of them asked, a young one, maybe 16, barely past. Training, voice quiet but steady. Did you really fight on Earth? Kyle didn't flinch, didn't look up at first. He just let the silence hang, heavy. The boy wasn't mocking, he was curious, desperate even, like so many before him. Kyle turned slowly, eyes the color of burnt metal, and stared at the horizon for a long moment. He reached into a worn leather pouch at his side, pulled out a single crystal, inserted it into the base of a comms node. The recruits watched as it flickered to life. A burst of warm sound filled the air, human laughter, pure, unfiltered joy. Then came the image of a sunrise, brilliant gold spilling across Earth's sky, painting clouds in colors these recruits had never seen. The final piece was a voice, steady and calm. Kane's voice. "We didn't just win," she said. "We became something more." The hologram faded, silence returned. The wind moved across the dust. Kyle's gaze remained on the blank sky. Finally, he spoke. "Yes," he said. "I survived, but I didn't win." The recruits waited, unsure if that was the end. It wasn't. They sent 1,000,000 of us. I came back, and I still don't understand how they beat us. He closed his eyes, and a soft, strange smile touched his lips. But I think it started because they refused to lose.